During a heated argument, my husband coldly admitted he only proposed to me because Sarah, the woman he truly wanted, had rejected him and he didn't want to end up alone. I simply smiled, said I needed some air. And what I did next shattered his world, exposed his lies, and made him realize he should have never taken me for granted. I'm Jessica, a 28-year-old pediatric nurse at our local children's hospital. It's truly challenging work, yet I find deep fulfillment in supporting children and their families during difficult periods. I first encountered my husband, Ryan, 3 years ago through mutual acquaintances at a casual barbecue. He was 30, involved in marketing, and appeared to be an ideal partner. Humorous, captivating, and considerate. Our path to marriage felt like something out of a storybook. Ryan pursued me with unwavering determination, often appearing at the hospital with coffee during my breaks, meticulously planning elaborate dates, and constantly expressing how fortunate he felt to have me. He often remarked that I stood apart from his previous relationships, being more authentic and compassionate. When he proposed after 8 months of our relationship, it felt perfectly natural and correct. The proposal itself was exquisite. He led me to the botanical gardens, the setting of our very first official date, and knelt by the rose garden. He delivered a heartfelt declaration about how I had transformed his life and inspired him to become a better individual. I was shedding joyful tears as I accepted. All our friends echoed that we were a flawless match. Our wedding was intimate yet delightful. Ryan's family seemed to adore me, consistently remarking on his improved happiness since we began our journey together. Even my parents, who had always been concerned about my trusting nature, admitted they believed Ryan was an excellent match for me. Everything simply felt right. The initial 2 years of our marriage were genuinely wonderful. We purchased a modest home together, journeyed to Europe for our first anniversary, and discussed the prospect of starting a family soon. Ryan was affectionate, encouraged my professional path, and serious disagreements were rare. I truly believed I had married my closest companion and soulmate. However, this past year subtle shifts began to emerge in ways I couldn't quite identify. Ryan grew more distant, dedicating longer hours to work and spending less time discussing his day with me. He had always been outgoing, but abruptly he started going out with colleagues multiple evenings a week without extending an invitation. When I inquired, he would dismissively state that I wouldn't enjoy their conversations about marketing strategies. The intimacy within our marriage also started to wane. Our physical closeness transitioned from several times a week to perhaps once every 2 weeks. When I attempted to initiate, Ryan would claim exhaustion or stress from work projects. He ceased giving me compliments as he once did and appeared annoyed by minor issues that had never bothered him previously. I began to suspect he might be involved with someone else, but I never uncovered any proof. His phone was not concealed. There were no mysterious charges on our credit cards, and he wasn't particularly secretive about his movements. He simply seemed emotionally detached from our marriage. Last Friday night, everything shattered. Ryan returned home around 10 p.m. after another evening out with coworkers, clearly having consumed several drinks. I was in the living room reading when he entered, and something about his demeanor felt different. Not merely intoxicated, but almost confrontational. I asked about his evening, and he offered a dismissive fine without even glancing at me. When I pointed out that we hadn't spent meaningful time together in weeks and proposed planning a date night, he rolled his eyes and accused me of being needy and demanding. That comment truly hurt. I am not by nature a dependent person, and requesting time with my husband did not seem unreasonable. I told him I wasn't being clingy. I was attempting to reconnect with him because I felt we were becoming mere housemates instead of a married couple. That's when Ryan erupted in a manner I had never witnessed before. He declared he was weary of my constant need for attention and validation, that I was tiresome to be around, and perhaps if I had more happening in my own life, I wouldn't be so fixated on him. His words were cruel and utterly uncharacteristic of the man I believed I had married. I was stunned by his viciousness, yet I attempted to remain composed. I asked where this animosity was coming from, and why he was being so harsh when all I had done was ask to spend time with him. I asserted that if there were issues in our marriage, we should address them as adults instead of him attacking me. Ryan chuckled, but it was not a pleasant sound. It was bitter and cold. He said, "You want to know what the problem is? The problem is that I only proposed because Sarah rejected me, and I didn't want to be alone." His words struck me like a physical blow. Sarah was his ex-girlfriend from college, someone he had casually mentioned a few times but never in any significant detail. I had always assumed she was simply a part of his past, not someone who influenced major life decisions. I felt the room spin as I processed what he had just uttered. My voice emerged smaller than I intended when I asked, "What do you mean?" Ryan seemed almost relieved to finally articulate these words. He informed me that he had been trying to win Sarah back for months before we met. They had dated for 2 years in college, and he had always regarded her as the love of his life. When they separated after graduation, he spent years hoping they would reconcile. About a year before we met, Sarah had relocated back to our city for work. Ryan reached out to her, and they had been communicating regularly, with him hoping to rekindle their relationship. He had been planning to propose to her, had even purchased a ring, when she informed him she was engaged to someone else. I was devastated. He slurred slightly. I had this ring, these plans, and suddenly no one to give them to. Then I met you a few weeks later, and you were so eager and available. You made it clear you were interested, so I figured why not? I asked if he had ever loved me, my heart already knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. Ryan shrugged and stated, "You were convenient and you said yes. I needed to move on from Sarah, and you seem like a safe choice." The casual cruelty of his remarks was astonishing. 3 years of my life, 3 years of love and dedication and building a future together, reduced to me being convenient and available. I remained as calm as possible and asked, "So our entire marriage is founded on me being your contingency plan?" Ryan nodded as if we were discussing the weather. "Pretty much, but it worked out fine. You're a good wife. You manage the house and you don't create drama. It's not like I've been unhappy." I smiled, though I felt my chest collapsing. I told him I needed fresh air and was going for a walk. Ryan simply shrugged and went upstairs, likely to pass out in our bedroom. I wandered our neighborhood for 2 hours, my thoughts racing. I wasn't merely hurt or angry, I was calculating. Ryan had just disclosed that our entire relationship was constructed on a fabrication, that I had been living in a fantasy while he had been settling for me. But more than that, he had stated it so nonchalantly, as if my emotions and the years of my life I had given him meant nothing. When I arrived home, Ryan was asleep and snoring loudly. I proceeded to our home office and began researching divorce attorneys. I also did something else. I started looking up Sarah online. It didn't take long to find her social media profiles. She was indeed married to a man named David, who appeared to be a decent person. They seemed content in their photographs, traveling and enjoying life together. What struck me most was that in none of her photos spanning several years did I see any indication of her communicating with or seeing Ryan. I spent the remainder of the weekend acting normally while Ryan nursed his hangover, and seemed to have no recollection of our conversation. When he asked if I was okay, I replied that I was fine, just fatigued from work. He accepted this without question, which revealed everything about how little he truly knew or cared about my emotional state. On Monday morning, I called in sick to work and dedicated the day to meeting with a divorce attorney named Patricia. She was astute, experienced, and immediately grasped the situation. I explained Ryan's revelation and how I felt deceived about the entire basis of our marriage. Patricia clarified that while emotional deception isn't grounds for a different type of divorce, we could certainly file for irreconcilable differences. Since we had only been married 3 years and had no children, the process would be relatively straightforward. The house would need to be sold and assets divided, but I had been prudent about keeping my nursing income in a separate account. More importantly, Patricia helped me understand that I had been financially astute without realizing it. The house was in both our names, but I had contributed more to the down payment and had been making larger mortgage payments due to my nursing overtime. We could easily document this, meaning I would receive a larger share of the home's equity. I also discovered something intriguing about our joint savings account. Ryan had been contributing less than he claimed, and there were several large withdrawals I didn't recall approving. Patricia suggested we would need to investigate these transactions. On Tuesday, I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I created a fictitious social media account and reached out to Sarah. I didn't identify myself initially, simply stating I was trying to connect with her about someone from her past. Sarah was surprisingly responsive and agreed to converse. When I explained who I was and what Ryan had disclosed, her reaction was immediate and forceful. She was appalled. "Jessica, I need you to know that Ryan has been harassing me for years," she stated during our phone call. "I've had to block him on multiple platforms. He appears at places he knows I'll be and attempts to persuade me to get back together. My husband David has had to speak to him directly several times. This situation was worsening by the minute." Sarah continued, "I never rejected a proposal from him because he never proposed. He's been fabricating this fantasy narrative where we were on the verge of reuniting when we absolutely were not. I've been trying to get him to leave me alone for years." Sarah then shared something that sent a chill down my spine. "He's told mutual friends that you two have an open marriage and that he's available. I thought you knew and was puzzled about why you'd consented to that. But now I realize he's been fabricating everything. We spoke for over an hour, and Sarah painted a picture of Ryan as someone who had been unable to accept their breakup and had been living in a delusional state regarding their relationship. She also mentioned that several people in their friend group had felt uncomfortable with his behavior, but hadn't known how to address it. Armed with this information, I contacted Patricia again and scheduled another meeting. She said Sarah's account could be valuable if Ryan attempted to claim I had been aware of his feelings for his ex. We also discussed the timeline of his harassment of Sarah, which had persisted throughout our marriage. On Wednesday evening, I was prepared to confront Ryan. He arrived home from work in a cheerful mood, discussing his day as if nothing had occurred. I waited until after dinner, and then sat down across from him in our living room. "Ryan, we need to discuss what you told me on Friday night." He appeared bewildered for a moment, then annoyed. "What are you talking about?" "About how you only married me because Sarah rejected you. About how I was convenient and available." Ryan's face cycled through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then frustration. "Look, I was intoxicated and upset about work matters. I didn't mean any of that." I took out my phone and showed him that I had been recording our conversation. "So you're saying you lied when you were drunk? Or you're lying now when you're sober?" The color drained from his face. "You recorded me without permission in our own home discussing our marriage? Completely legal." I confirmed this with Patricia, but that's not the crucial part. The crucial part is that I spoke with Sarah. Ryan became completely still. "What do you mean you spoke with Sarah?" I informed him about our conversation, about how she had revealed his years of harassment and stalking behavior, about how he had never proposed to her and she had never rejected him. With each detail, Ryan's face grew redder, and his breathing became shallower. "She's lying," he finally uttered. "She's trying to create problems in our marriage because she's jealous." I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Jealous of what? Of a woman who married a man who's been stalking his ex for years? Who fabricated the entire foundation of our relationship? Ryan began to grow defensive, raising his voice and claiming I was distorting everything. That's when I told him I had already filed for divorce, and that he needed to find alternate accommodations while we handled the legal details. The explosion that followed was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. Ryan screamed that I was overreacting, that many marriages encountered difficulties, that I was discarding something valuable over an insignificant matter. When I remained composed, he shifted tactics and began weeping, claiming he did love me and that he had simply been confused. I told him that even if that were true, which I doubted, he had spent our entire marriage deceiving me about his motivations and harassing another woman. These were not mere mistakes or confusion. They were character flaws that could not be remedied with an apology. Ryan packed a bag and departed that night, staying with his brother. Over the next few days, he attempted every manipulative strategy imaginable, calling incessantly, appearing at the hospital to talk, sending flowers with notes about how much our marriage meant to him. Update 1. 2 weeks have passed since I confronted Ryan, and the repercussions have been more dramatic than anticipated. The divorce proceedings are progressing smoothly, but Ryan's reactions have become increasingly unstable. First, he attempted to turn our mutual friends against me by asserting I was divorcing him over a misunderstanding, and that I was being vindictive and cruel. Several individuals contacted me, concerned about his rendition of events. So, I shared the recording of our conversation with a few close friends. The response was immediate. Our social circle was horrified, not only by what Ryan had said to me but by the revelation concerning his behavior towards Sarah. Several admitted they had noticed his preoccupation with her, but hadn't realized the extent of it. Ryan's brother called me to apologize for his conduct and to inform me that Ryan had been staying out all night, drinking and ranting about how I had ruined his life. His family was beginning to witness a side of him they had apparently never seen before. The most gratifying development occurred when Sarah's husband, David, decided to take action. After learning about Ryan's continuous harassment and his fabrications about their marriage, David filed a restraining order against Ryan. Apparently, Ryan had been appearing at Sarah's workplace and informing people he was trying to reconcile with his soulmate. Ryan was served with a restraining order at his office, which led to a very uncomfortable discussion with his supervisor about his personal life, impacting his professional standing. His company specializes in family-focused marketing, and they were not pleased about employing someone who stalks married women. But the true shock came when I uncovered the purpose of those mysterious withdrawals from our savings account. Patricia's financial investigation revealed that Ryan had been expending our money on costly gifts for Sarah. Jewelry, flowers, even a weekend getaway reservation that she had never accepted. He had been funding his fantasy relationship with our shared assets. This discovery added financial malfeasance to the divorce proceedings and significantly strengthened my case. Ryan had stolen from our marital assets to pursue another woman, which made his assertions about our marriage being sound even more absurd. Update 2. 1 month later, and Ryan's world has completely collapsed. The restraining order violation transpired faster than anyone expected. 3 days after being served, Ryan appeared at Sarah and David's home at midnight, intoxicated and demanding to speak with Sarah. David contacted the police, and Ryan was arrested for violating the restraining order. He spent 2 nights in jail before his brother could post bail. The arrest garnered local news attention because it occurred in an affluent neighborhood, where this type of drama seldom happens. Ryan's employer saw the news coverage and terminated him immediately, citing the company's values and the negative publicity. Our divorce proceedings accelerated after the arrest. Patricia contended that Ryan's criminal conduct and financial deception warranted a larger settlement in my favor. The judge concurred, especially after reviewing the evidence of Ryan's harassment campaign and misuse of marital funds. I received 70% of our home's equity and the majority of our other assets. Ryan was also ordered to pay my legal fees and attend mandatory counseling before the divorce could be finalized. The most unexpected development came from Ryan's family. His mother called me to apologize and to share some information she believed I needed to know. Apparently, Ryan's obsession with Sarah was not new. He had been discussing her constantly for years, even during our marriage. His family had assumed it was normal nostalgia for a college relationship, but now they realized it was something far more troubling. His mother also disclosed that Ryan had lied to them about our relationship from the outset. He told them that I had pursued him aggressively, and that he had settled down with me because his mother desired him to marry. Even his own family had been subjected to his falsehoods and manipulation. Several mutual friends reached out to apologize for initially believing Ryan's narrative. They had started comparing notes and realized that his accounts of our marriage had been inconsistent and often portrayed me as needy or overly dramatic, precisely the opposite of how they had always known me to be. Update 3. 3 months following the confrontation, the divorce is finalized, and I am rebuilding my life in ways I never anticipated. I relocated to a lovely 1-bedroom apartment near the hospital, and for the first time in years, I feel completely at peace in my own space. Ryan attempted one final manipulation by appearing at my apartment complex and leaving letters claiming he had realized how much he loved me and pleading for another chance. These letters were rambling, desperate writings that made it clear he still didn't comprehend what he had done wrong. I forwarded them to Patricia, who submitted them to the police as evidence of continued harassment. The restraining order against Ryan was extended after this incident, and he was required to attend additional counseling sessions. His brother informed me that Ryan had been spiraling since losing his job, unable to accept accountability for any of his actions. Meanwhile, my life has taken an unexpectedly positive turn. The head of pediatric nursing at the hospital approached me about applying for a supervisor position that would involve training new nurses and developing patient care protocols. Apparently, my colleagues had noticed my professionalism and composure during this challenging period, and it had impressed hospital administration. I also began therapy to process the betrayal and to understand how I had overlooked the signs of Ryan's deception. My therapist helped me realize that I hadn't missed signs. Ryan had been deliberately manipulative and had actively worked to conceal his true feelings and motivations. The most restorative development came through my friendship with Sarah. After everything came to light, we began communicating regularly, and she became an unexpected source of support. She helped me understand that Ryan's behavior toward her had intensified significantly during our marriage, meaning he had been actively pursuing another woman while cohabiting with me. Sarah also shared that several women in their college friend group had similar anecdotes about Ryan's inability to accept rejection and his tendency to reframe relationship history to suit his narrative. I wasn't his first victim. I was merely the one unfortunate enough to marry him. Final update. 6 months later, I can genuinely state that uncovering the truth about my marriage was the most beneficial thing that ever occurred to me. I received a promotion at work and have been thriving in my new capacity. I have also started dating again, slowly and cautiously, but with a much clearer comprehension of warning signs and healthy relationship dynamics. Ryan's life, in contrast, has continued its descent. He violated the restraining order one more time by calling Sarah's workplace and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. His brother told me that their family has essentially distanced themselves from him, unable to cope with his refusal to take responsibility for his actions or seek serious help. The house sold for more than we anticipated, providing me with a substantial down payment for a place of my own when I am ready. I am considering purchasing a small house near the hospital, Something that will be entirely mine and free of any deceptive foundations. Reflecting, I recognized that the indicators were present throughout our marriage. Ryan's emotional detachment, his lack of genuine interest in my thoughts and feelings, the way he seemed to be merely going through the motions of being a husband rather than truly investing in our relationship. But he had been adept at making me question my own perceptions and convincing me that his behavior was normal. The most crucial lesson I have absorbed is to trust my instincts. When something feels amiss in a relationship, it usually is. No amount of superficial kindness or routine actions can compensate for authentic love and dedication. I am thankful every day that Ryan's drunken candor revealed the truth before I squandered more years of my life on someone who viewed me as nothing more than a convenient stand-in. Sometimes the most painful disclosures are also the most liberating ones. To anyone encountering this who identifies similar patterns in their own relationship, trust yourself. You deserve to be someone's primary choice, not their fallback option. You deserve genuine affection, not convenient acceptance. And you deserve a partner who chooses you every single day, not someone who settled for you because their true preference was unavailable. The life I am constructing now is entirely my own, based on my own decisions and aspirations, rather than someone else's fabrications and manipulations. It is humbler than what I initially envisioned, but it is real, and that makes all the difference.